We're back. Thanks for staying with us on Checkpoint. Your feedback tonight. Wilson Alumasa says, when access to national resources is based on your gender, that's discrimination. And another one here from Moses Awar says, you're talking of insignificant things. I've never seen any youth, woman, who has made it through using these funds. Neither will the men. Mheshimiwa Dzuleka, is a fund, like we're just talking about during the break, is a fund the right way to go in terms of if we're looking for gender parity? Is a fund the right way to go in terms of making men and women feel equal?
It's not actually, even for the women and youth. I've said earlier, and you know, the comment that you gave supports that it hasn't really brought people out of poverty. It's just kind of like some sort of cushion. By the way, also the fund is not even a grant. It's like a loan and you have to pay back. And we found so many people who haven't been able to pay back. So people actually end up even worse off than they were before. Because at least before you didn't have a debt. Now you have a debt.
Could the same argument be used, because you said it hasn't really worked as much as possible, or as much as we'd have liked. Could the same argument be used for the Women Fund and the Youth Fund?
Yes, it's the Women Enterprise Fund, Youth Enterprise Fund. I haven't seen figures. I haven't even felt the impact on the ground.
So should we scrap the Women and Youth Fund then? If it doesn't seem to be having an impact?
Actually, in terms of when I heard of the WIZO Fund, I was like, oh my God, another fund. Why don't you just put money in the Youth Enterprise Fund and so on? There are better ways in which I think government can help young people and women. And I think one of the ways is to actually, like in terms of entrepreneurship, what happens with the funds, they just give people money and they don't go with them through the process. Even in WIZO Fund, they say they're doing training, but it's a one-off training. So if it's like agriculture, if I haven't gone to college and so on, I need somebody to walk with me through the whole process up to marketing and selling until I'm confident to be able to stand on my own. So what happens is, government is throwing money at different groups and then not holding their hands. So it's not going to be sustainable.
All right. Where would the funds come from, Mheshimiwa Chanzu? 5 to 10 billion shillings is what you're seeking. Where would the money come from?
No, it will come from budgetary provisions, because depending on the weight we put on the issues, then it should be. And again, today the countries, we are dealing with a budget of about 1.8 to 1.9 trillion. And that it's like actually a drop in the ocean. But what I'm saying is this: there must be a start. Because since these other funds have already been started, we wanted to find a way of ensuring that they can work, so that it reaches a stage when all these people are trained and they can be able to get money, like from small and medium enterprise organizations and so on. But there must be a start.
Okay. And so for you, this Men's Fund is a start towards getting us to gender parity, which you believe we're not at now. Do you believe women now have a greater advantage than men?
Of course not, because I said earlier on, this has been caused because of the historical issues in this country where people are not exposed.
So if women are not yet at par with men, why then start the Men's Fund?
The woman, even if the woman gets money, she will still go to the same house where she's going to live with the man and
So then why need the Men's Fund?
You need more.
Okay. And why not give more to the women? Just for argument's sake.
Let me add something there. Kenya, our country is based on two strong religions, the Muslims and the Christians. And we believe that man is the head of the family and the woman is the neck. And of course, that is a fact.
Dzuleka,
so now, when it comes to funding, I must say that the women's fund, according to a research that we have done, has created a lot of division in the family. Because now, when this money goes to some women, they desert their men.
Great.
They force their men out of the family.
Great. Njoki?
Let me finish.
Okay, very quickly.
We are not going to stop our lobbying here, because members of parliament must learn that we are going to continue fighting for this money, because it is going to bring together the family as a unit.
All right.
And if it doesn't, then automatically we are going to call for mass action. We are going to boycott even the elections. We are going to even tell our dear men not to pay taxes, because I believe men are the best taxpayers.
Okay.
Why again then are they?
So if they are the best taxpayers, why would they need the funds?
Of course, they are also men who don't have income-generating activities. And that is why we have a lot of drug abuse and alcohol abuse.
Let's have Njoki.
I think there may be a fallacy in the imagination that if a man has more money in his pocket, then the family is going to work as a unit. intricate workings of a family are not really based on what's inside somebody's pocket. It's in, if I am married to Honorable Chanzu here, which I am not, for the record,
Okay.
even though he looks like a wonderful man.
For argument's sake.
If I was married to Honorable Chanzu, does he take care of me? Am I able to take care of him? In whatever ways we understand that taking care. It's not money in pocket,
Right.
it's how people treat one another. And so even when we talk about affirmative action and the things that it does, affirmative action is never meant to be an end point. It is a logistic. The idea is socio-cultural integration and the ways in which marginalized people can have the same access as the privileged people, so that everybody can move forward together. And I think at that point all of us are seeing eye to eye. And so if we say that affirmative action needs to get us to a particular point, now the data needs to come to be asked. How do we get to that particular point? How do we measure it?
What is that point?
What is that point?
Yes.
And that idea of gender parity, again, seems to be running at odds with the idea of men being in charge as regards African culture, as regards Christianity, as regards Islam. So that is the
Is it
conversation I
possible to have a
feel that we
discussion
need
like
to
this,
be
Njoki,
having.
without culture coming in and religion?
Is it?
Should
And
we?
that is the question.
Should we remove that from the discussion?
If we're going to,
We cannot forget
if gender
about
parity
foundations.
is a thing that we value, then we need to realize that we, at this point in time, are standing at a point in history that nobody has ever stood before, where women and men are both bringing incomes to the table. This has never happened. It was not the case in history, and so we don't have a history to fall back on to see how these things are working. And so we're moving forward to a place where we've not charted. What does it look like when it's not the man is the one who's bringing home the bacon, so he gets to make all the decisions. And so if the woman is bringing in an opinion, she's bringing in ideas, how do we then get along at that point in time?
Okay.
And do our religions, do our cultures have room for that? A lot of things have changed culturally. There were times when nobody could even assume that you could get married in an inter-ethnic marriage or
Right.
an interracial one, and
Right.
we're doing that.
Right.
So the ways that people see one another in culture have shifted. And so even in this, even in who gets what in whose pocket, can we shift them?
Okay. All right.
I just wanted to add, because
as we
people have
conclude,
been
yes.
mentioning religion, and I'll say if you're talking about Islam, and you know I'm a Muslim, I hope you say the right thing. And I wanted to tell Mheshimiwa Chanzu, like in terms when we're speaking about Africans, also Africans are not homogeneous. Africans are different. Like I'm a Muslim African, and as a Muslim woman, I'm allowed to inherit from my father, even when I'm married. I'm allowed to have my own wealth. In fact, the Prophet's first wife, Khadija, was richer. Actually, she was like a businesswoman, and you know, she actually at first that's how they met. He was working for her. So it's a different kind of
If
feeling.
we're going to bring
and
in
that
the
was
conversation
and
of
yeah,
culture.
and she's like the first wife. He loved her, and she was richer than he was. So for you know, for some Muslims, a large percentage in this country, it's okay for women to have, you know, more money. But in this country also, it's not the majority of women who have more money. It's a few who have more money than men do. The majority of men actually have access to more resources than women do.
Okay, as we conclude, Nderitu, you mentioned very quickly that the Women's Fund, based on your research, has caused division in the home.
Divorce, separation, and all that.
Do you have figures to support
Of course
that?
we have.
What are the numbers?
30% of the women who have access to the Women's Fund are not now living with their husbands.
And you've been able to
They
make
have
the
been-
direct
Of
correlation.
Who did the
have
study?
done the research.
Who did the study?
It is Maendeleo Wanaume organization.
Okay. And you made the correlation.
And let us rely on research. And that is why I'm also challenging the government that even before the bill is tabled in Parliament, why can't the government do a research on if men require funding?
But it's
I
I
completely agree with Mr. Njoka about why the government has not done research. These are the reasons that we start commissions of inquiry. They're not just for devil worship
Which
and
would
things like
actually
that.
require
A commission
the
of
funds.
inquiry is needed for things like this.
Okay.
But
They have
the point
done
at which I
research.
don't
Gender
agree,
based
the point at which I don't
violence.
agree with
Government has not done
Bwana Njoka is the assumption that because you put money in a woman's pocket, she's immediately going to cut and run. I don't think that's true, and that's what you're
But also
saying
I want to-
when you sit here and say that that women 30% of women who have access to this fund have gotten a divorce. What other factors were at play?
Can I just quickly say, research has been done by government extensively. I think if you go to every ministry, there's books and books
Tell
and books
me
of
any
research.
single research
There's like the
that has been
domestic
done
household surveys. That's
Violence
domestic-
against men.
Okay.
Domestic
You want-
household
okay.
surveys.
Just
all
a
right.
small one, eh?
Yes.
Just a small one on a very light.
as we
Only
close.
those who have done the research.
All right.
This
One moment.
thing
please.
must work by the end of the day. Let me tell
Right.
you one thing, eh? Because of the level of poverty in our country, Today, if you go to the villages, if you go and see, and I think it also happens to you, if you go to see your grandfather and your grandmother, if they're there, or your mother and the old people, when you are giving them something, like you want to give money, in a number of places, those people live in the same house, a mother and a father.
Right.
But when you are giving them something, you know, a number of places you have to separate and give the mama her, if it is 1,000 bob, you give her and you give them there is. Because if you give one person, sometimes they don't even disclose.
That's
Okay.
it.
What you
All
have
right.
given.
And
That's very too much more.
and that would be a place to conclude on.
So this is the reason we are still somewhere where we must bring up these people for them to be able to understand
Okay.
that we now have to train them in order to manage to be able to make profit to survive on it.
All right, and we
Yeah,
absolutely have to leave it at that. Our time is up. Like you say, that analogy that's being made when you go home to your grandparents, you give both of them money, and perhaps that is what Yusuf Chanzo and his colleagues in Parliament would like to see, that money is given to both. Is it the solution towards getting men and women on an equal footing? Keep your comments coming in. The hashtag is Checkpoint. I want to thank my guests, Njoki Ngumi, Mheshimiwa Chanzu, Mheshimiwa Zuleka Hassan, and Nderitu Njoka. Thank you for coming. The discussion obviously does not end here. We would not have enough time for that. But all and a lot has been said. So the question tonight we ask is, what's the point?
Thank you.